Alexx Leyva, welcome to Built to Sell Radio.
Thank you, John. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your dad's story. So tell me how this started. How did Infinity become about?
Yeah, it is a crazy story. I'm excited to tell it. So my parents were we should kind of go back to the beginning. My mom got pregnant by my dad when my mom was 16 and my dad was 18. And they were in high school together. That was with my older brother, and I'm the second oldest. And they were pregnant with me when my mom was 18, I guess. So they were very young. They went on to have 6 boys. So I have 5 brothers. And when we were younger, my mom came from a really religious family, and her parents, I guess, according to her, kind of like kicked her out when she got pregnant. And then my dad came from a family where his dad was an alcoholic and left them early on. So we grew up in extreme poverty, and my dad was the man, and he stuck through. My mom's incredible too, but they stuck together and decided they were going to try and make it all work. And for us kids, And so my dad, when he was around 18-ish years old, he started selling print machines, like print copy machines, door to door, because that's when, printers were newer back then and people didn't really have them. Right. So he sold them door to door and became really good at that. And eventually he opened his own printing company. And his printing company was located in Reno, Nevada, and it was by this river. And in 1997, that river flooded and wiped out his whole business right when he was getting off the ground.
Wow.
So then between 97 and 2000, he kind of floundered around, but that's when technology and the internet was starting to take off. And he had a friend who asked him if he could build some type of insurance software for a local hospital. And my dad, being the entrepreneur that he was, always would say yes and then figure it out, right? And so he said yes. He built something for the hospital. They liked what he did. And then after that, some people came to him who were kind of non-bank lenders. So they're alternative credit lenders. Their whole business was lending out their money to make money off of their loan products, right? And so they said, hey, there's no good software for us. The banks have good software, but for anyone who's not a bank but wants to lend out money, we don't have good software.
So what's a non-bank? Let me just are we talking payday loans, or what kind of non-bank lending would be?
Yeah, payday loans, installment loans.
Okay.
Anything like that. Yeah. Alternative credit, everything is kind of taking off a lot nowadays, right? So fintech became a lot bigger since then, but this was the early days of that.
Got it. Okay. So one of these alternative lenders came to your dad and said, hey, can you build us some custom software? Because there's nothing really good for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where does it go from there?
So my dad was trying, he had done a handful of things between 97 and 2000. He tried to launch his own internet browser back when that was common. There's Netscape Navigator and all these different things. And I still remember being at home. I'm in 3rd grade, and he gets a shipment of discs to his door for his own internet browser that he was going to try and sell, that he was never really able to sell. So anyway, he was kind of dabbling in all this stuff. So when someone came to him and asked him that, he found a guy in Russia, which, again, he's ahead of his time. This is before a lot of people were outsourcing to the Philippines and all this kind of stuff. Well, dad finds this guy in Russia named Andre, and it turns out that he is one of the smartest dudes in the world, and he can do the work of entire dev teams. So Andre's freaking smart. And Andre, my dad says, hey, if I can figure out what these people need and sell them stuff and manage their relationships, would you be able to build it? And he says, yeah, I can definitely do that. So my dad brought Andre on as an employee, which again, really smart from my dad's perspective. He didn't give up equity or anything. Brought Andre on as an employee and figured out how to kind of fund it with the people and work together, and brought on his first couple of clients that way. And so that's how Infinity Software was born.
And the business model at the time was custom. So he developed a custom piece of software for each lender. How did that evolve over time?
Yeah. So it started with custom software, but my dad, being pretty forward thinking, kind of was on the front lines of SaaS thinking, and he realized that he couldn't build custom one-off stuff for every company. A lot of software companies at that time did that, and they weren't able to scale, right? And so my dad, what he did was he told people, hey, you can pay for custom development. We'll add in the features that you want, but those features get pushed out to everyone using the platform. And so as clients came to him and wanted development, he would develop that and then put it out to the platform and made the platform more robust and sexy for other people. And so it attracted more clients. And so that's kind of how it started.
And so get me up to speed in terms of time frame. This is sort of early 2000s or?
Yeah. This is still early 2000s. Between 2000 and 2017, around 2015 to 2017, he took the business from startup to around 3 million in recurring revenue. And he had a team of about 13 employees over that time span. He went from home base to having an office. So he did an incredible job with that foundation piece, but it did take 17 years.
Yeah. And so how old are you in 2015?
In 2015, I'm like 24, 25.
And what about the other brothers, the other five? Like, what's the age range from the eldest brother to the youngest?
My older brother's like 27 at the time, and the one under me who's involved is 24, I believe, at the time. And then the youngest brother wasn't involved with the business, but he's in his teenage years.
Okay. So you guys are young, 27, 25, and 24. Yeah. I was doing a little bit of research before the show, and I understand something pretty heavy happened in 2015. Maybe walk me through what happened.
Yeah. So at the time, so we grew up kind of in poverty. We were on government assistance for lunches. We got like kind of food storage food from our church that helped our family, supporting us through my parents trying to figure stuff out and make it work. And around 2009 was when my dad started actually kind of making something from his business. And that's when I graduated high school. So I left home, went to live in Thailand for 2 years and did some service stuff for our church. And then I went to college. And while I'm in college up into my 20s, I'm studying exercise and wellness and business stuff in school, and dad's running his company. So we don't know much about it, right? And so I ended up getting married and me and my wife were living in Thailand for a while. And while in Thailand, I get a phone call from my mom, and my mom said, hey, things aren't going very well. We just got the diagnosis, and dad has early onset dementia and multiple sclerosis, and that it's gone undiagnosed for something like over 10 years. So we didn't know. We were so young, we weren't involved in our dad's company, really. It just looked really good from the outside, And so my mom says things aren't looking good. We're wondering if you could come home and help. And so we pack up our stuff, kind of. We thought we'd be going back to Thailand, so we left our stuff. We fly home to come check in on mom and dad. And it turns out that, the business was doing well revenue-wise, but as far as like internal ops and meeting promises to customers and all this stuff that was going on, it was in really rough shape. And I think it was largely due to some of my dad's like health issues that he was struggling with. And so we kind of had this family meeting where we're like, well, mom and dad didn't have another retirement plan because we didn't come from wealth. We didn't understand any of this, but we need to figure out something. And so we said, being young and entrepreneurial guys, like, how hard could it be? We'll just jump over and kind of jump into the business and take it over, and we'll scale it up for mom and dad and give them an exit, and then we'll move on to the next thing. And it took a lot longer than we expected, but we actually pulled it off.
Wow. I want to get into that. Before though, just take me through the conversation that you had with your mom. You're in Thailand. I mean, what was that like to hear that your dad was struggling like that?
It was really hard. I mean, it kind of made a lot of sense because some of the stuff that was going on in the business and with them wasn't really adding up. And we were just kind of like, but every entrepreneur is different and we're all kind of crazy. So it's like, we don't know, but it was hard. I mean, it was really hard. And my first attempt was like, hey, I'm studying wellness. I'm going to try and help my dad get well. So I'll come in and help in the business, but I'm going to help get him stem cell treatments and all this stuff. And let's see if we can get him healthy, because on my side, I had launched a fitness book that became a best-selling book, and I was trying to launch a supplement company. And so I wasn't wanting to put that stuff on pause right away. But as I came back and realized kind of, how much had to be done within the business and what was going on for mom and dad, it was like, okay, I got to go all in. Because the way me and my brothers saw it is our parents could have left us when they were 16 and 18. They could have aborted us. Like, they didn't leave us, so we're not going to leave them, And so that's kind of how we viewed it. So we just went all in on trying to help.
And what's the conversation that you have with your brothers at that point, beyond just the superficial, okay, we're going to step in and help? I mean, how did you guys divvy up responsibilities, equity, like all hands on deck, or did you formalize structure at all?
We did not formalize structure. We had no idea what we were doing. And dad was off and on if he wanted our help within the business, because he's also kind of struggling with like facing this health stuff and what does it mean. And, he had come from nothing to building this big thing. And so he's processing a lot. It's a really emotional thing for him as well, So it's kind of hard all around. But one of my brothers graduated from a top accounting program. And so I went to him and I was like, dude, what if you can take over like CFO, billing, all the financial side? I'm good with people, marketing, sales, and all that. So I will handle the people side, and let's go all in together. And so we went into the company, and it was like most startups, it's really still, even though it was doing well from a revenue perspective, it was kind of stuck in startup mode because of my dad's mentality on how he ran the business. So he did not believe in titles. He didn't want to give people clear roles. There wasn't really documented processes and procedures for things. Like, it was just kind of a survival thing, which is why it took such a toll on him as well. So I kind of went into that whole side of the business. Of the 13 employees that were there, because my dad he's the best salesperson in the world. He's super strategic and super smart. What he wasn't good at was hiring. He got kind of lucky with the Russian developer, but with the rest of the team left over, of the 13 employees, we had to terminate 10 of them and kept only three. But what's crazy is one of those three is now CEO of the company. She did an incredible job. She stuck with us through everything, and now she's doing a great job as a CEO. So,
wow, 1 for 13. Batting average in baseball.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, so your brother is an accountant. You guys divvy up responsibilities. That makes sense to me. You mentioned there were 3 brothers, 27, 25, and 24 in the business. I know what 2 of you were doing. What was the third one doing?
So it was 2 of us were really deep in, and then another 2 brothers were sort of in and out. One of the other brothers that's older than me and was kind of in and out did a lot of the like branding and sort of like he helped with like redoing our website and things like that. But he came in and out because he also went off and did like a marriage and family therapy degree and things like that. But we always knew that he was there to help us. When we took over from our dad as well, he had 2 offices, one in Nevada and one in Utah. And my older brother, who did the branding stuff, was managing the Utah office. But shortly after me and my brother kind of took over, me and my brother Ryan, we closed down that Utah location and consolidated back to one because it wasn't working well. So.
Got it. And how did you and Ryan figure out the kind of compensation equity stuff? I mean, did you broach the topic with your dad about, okay, we're going to come in, but we need some equity, or like, was it just a salary, or how did you pay yourself?
Yeah. We started as the lowest paid employees in the whole company. And we did that because my dad didn't want anyone to think of nepotism or anything like that. As you can imagine, as we come into the company, no one in our company knows about the health stuff that he's facing, right? And so when we come in, it's like, oh, the owner's kids, nepotism, they're just going to come in and get leadership positions and stuff. And so we actually started, and we had worked off and on for him as growing up, over summers and stuff between semesters. But basically what we did is we started as the lowest paid employees. We came in, we started building trust with everyone, showing them nepotism wasn't going to happen, establishing relationships and making things better. And once we started doing that, the team started to trust us. And then we were able to leverage that to push the business forward. But we still had no equity. Our salaries would increase over time as we took on more responsibilities in a way that we felt made sense. And then me and Ryan would just work on that together and try and comp ourselves in a fair way that we would have comped any other team member. And then the equity piece actually came into play as we got closer to the exit. To be honest, we could have kept scaling the business and it would have been amazing. But my parents by this time were also sort of like contemplating divorce and other things. And so we're trying to navigate all this, but we don't want to share this to the outside world because, it would hurt our valuation and hurt trust with our customers and things. And so we're kind of like keeping that stuff private as a family, working to build the business together. And we get to this point where it just makes the most sense to exit because of what's going on for my parents. And so we told them like, hey, at this point, my dad's not in the business at all. We run everything. And so if we're going to sell it off, we were like, hey, we would love some form of equity for what we've done. We took the business from 3 to 10 million annual revenue, took the team from 13, like 3 up to 34 full-time employees, right? And all this stuff. And so basically we decided to split equity 80% to my parents and 20% divided between me, Ryan, and the 2 of our other brothers that were involved.
Got it. So you each got 5% and they got 80. You took the business from 3 million to 10 million.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'd love to hear what you thought, but we may have undervalued ourselves. But when you're like young, you don't know. And we also didn't realize how incredible what we had done was necessarily. You see on Instagram and all these different places that everyone's making $100 million companies and blah, 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 And so we took a lot of it for granted. I mean, we're just deep in the trenches trying to make it work, So we did not necessarily realize, I think, until a few years after, like, holy cow, most people did not pull off what we pulled off.
What were the 2 or 3 best decisions you made to get the company from 3 to 10 million in annual recurring revenue?
Oh, that's a really good question. So we had mentors, and one of my mentors has said to us that if you want to 10x a company, you have to 10x the team. So number one, I think, was revamping, just like you're probably familiar with this, but we rolled out like job scorecards and we made everything clear. We had KPIs to each role and we got everything really organized, and we had a really solid hiring process and onboarding process based off of those job scorecards and how we bring people in. And so that was number one, was just getting good people in, because we had strong recurring revenue and we had a good product. We just didn't have the team to keep it going, right? So once we got the right team members in, we had the company was able to grow really quickly. Number 2 was on the culture side. When we took over the business, there wasn't a defined culture because my dad didn't really understand and believe in that kind of stuff. And so it was a really rough place to work. People weren't happy there. So we came in and we said, well, let's give it mission, culture, vision, values, make it a good place to work. And we actually we got it so good that an Apple executive came to visit us one time, former Apple executive. He came in to visit us and he said, you guys, this is such an incredible company. It feels like Apple in the early days. And if I was younger, I would want to work here with you. And
what was so special about your culture?
I think we actually lived it. So our mission was to give our employees, customers, and partners the freedom to grow. And we did that through customizable software that would grow with their business. And then on the internal side, it was important to us that the employees were involved as well. So we always tried to help people follow a value system that would take their life to the next level. And we always told people like, look, we want you to be with us as long as it makes sense for you. And then if you outgrow us, then good. We just hope your life is better because you've been here. And so we had a lot of people where either they grew with us and became the CEO eventually, or their career was moved forward to the next level because of their time with us. And I think that kind of abundance mentality, clear communication, fun, energetic environment just really worked for people. They could tell that we cared about them, and so they cared about us. And it kind of created this win-win situation for everybody.
So you get to 10 million and your parents are going through some stuff. Obviously, they've gone through a lot of stuff. Did they, like, who determined, I'm trying to understand how sick your dad was at the time. Like, was he of sound enough mind to in 2020 to say, no, I want to sell, you're going to get 5% each. Like, was he able to do that, or was your mom sort of driving the bus more, or were you guys as brothers? Like, I'm just trying to get a sense of how much his dementia had kicked in, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest, it's all confusing, but my dad was not involved in the sale of the company because at that time his MS was like really flaring up and it wasn't good. But my dad's health has gotten significantly better post-exit, and he actually went on to sell a second company, not for the same size or anything, but he had a different side business that he was able to exit. So he's gotten a lot better since. So that is important to note. But as far as like with Infinity, he wasn't super involved with that, and it was mostly my mom and us consulting together. Okay.
And so how did you feel about the equity split your mom proposed?
So, I mean,
yeah.
I think this is good to share for your audience, just so everyone can hear the family side that no one really talks about, right? I like to just be transparent. I think this is why our company did so well as well. But my dad was part of those conversations as far as the equity split. And you hear the quote, it's in the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. It says, never outshine the master. That's one of his laws, right? And we did outshine the master, and it was not good because my dad's wrestling with just, trying to understand the sickness and dealing with that. And then the loss of the identity that comes with that. And then the fact that he worked on something for 17 years, and then his kids come in and just kind of like take it up to 10. Like, there's a lot to process there, And so he actually originally proposed that we do not get any equity, and that the experience we had was the payout, that we got to experience doing something like that. And we said, well, that sounds good, but this is going to take a long time to sell this business. If we were to walk away from the business, the whole thing crumbles. That we've hired the entire team. We are the middle management team. Like, that doesn't really work, And so we kind of just had these family conversations of like, what would be good. And me and my brothers didn't want to come off as like greedy, and we didn't want to take advantage of our parents in a hard time in any way. So we ended up at the 80-20, and we felt good about it. I think to some degree, as we've gotten older, we're like, dang, I think we undervalued ourselves. But at the same time, I mean, who gets that kind of opportunity, So we're just grateful for that as well.
You mentioned not outshining the master. How did your dad feel about the decision to share some equity after you made the case? I mean, was he begrudgingly agreement, or did he see your way and feel good about it in the end?
It was kind of begrudgingly, but he knew by that point that there wasn't really another way to go, a good way. And I think it was also largely my mom's influence too, because she was just kind of like, look, because my dad is entrepreneurial enough, a little bit ego driven enough to say, well, fine, you guys want to try and walk away, I'll take it back over. Like, you know what I mean? My mom's like, there's no way. My mom's like, that's not going to work. Like, we're not doing this, So it came together in the end, and honestly, everyone's in good terms about it all now. I think my parents, I don't know. They are grateful for a $25 million exit and that what it's done for their life, you know? Mm-hmm. Now, does my dad still believe deep down that he maybe could have made it bigger or better in some way? I think he does, you know, and that's fine. I think it's good that he should believe in himself. And I'm also grateful for what we did.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the amazing exit. So let's talk about that. So you work out the math with your mom and dad, and what's next? Like, how did you get this business ready to go to market, and how did you market it to a potential buyer?
Yeah. Fortunately enough, so my whole philosophy with scaling the company was there's other people that have done this that know better than you do. So whenever we faced a problem, we would go find a book on the topic, read the book, yours being one of them, and to implement what we learned from the book. And so, you know, your book talks, and it's funny, the main character in your book is named Alex, if I remember correctly, which
you're right, it is.
Yeah. But your talks a lot about standardizing processes, procedures, going from a service to shifting it into more of a product-based approach and things like that, right? And so basically we would read books on every topic, and we would use those to start scaling up the company. And that allowed us to build out more of a middle management team. Like we had to build in the structure to get to 10 million. So we were pretty well prepped for an exit, which your book talks about, like trying to be prepared all along the way, just in case something crazy happened, right? And so we were well prepped, except for the fact that we had never replaced ourselves completely. We weren't completely absentee owner. And what happened was, by the time we got to this point, me and Ryan are just kind of the leaders at the top running this thing. And we say, you know, mom and dad say they want to sell. And so we found a company called Corum Group. You're probably familiar with them. I don't know. It's a CORUM group. And their whole thing is that they help you sell your business, and they claim to have sold the most software companies in like the history of humanity, basically. And so we partnered with them to go to market. And the strategy was that we would develop our pitch with their team and practice pitching in front of 100 different CEOs and staff from their company. And then once we got the pitch dialed in, we kind of create an auction environment where they send this pitch out to a bunch of people that they've worked with in the past. And we try and get a handful of buyers to kind of compete over it and drive up the price. And so that's how we did that.
And this is roughly 2020?
Yeah, it is 2020. Yeah, because I'm thinking when COVID and stuff happened. So yeah, this is like early 2020. Yeah,
early 2020. And sort of walk me through the metrics in the business. You mentioned top line 10 million. How much of that is sort of SaaS recurring versus one-off?
It's almost all SaaS recurring. So my dad, and what's amazing too, my dad is super smart when he came up with the way that we bill our clients, and we got a percentage of every transaction through our software. So there's a small base fee plus a percentage of every transaction. And that means every time someone's making a payment on a loan or, you know, pulling a certain report through the software, we get a little bit off of that. And so we had some customers that are paying us $100,000 a month. And then we had down to the smaller guys, you know, and the bigger guys obviously had a lot more sway and stuff, but that's the way the billing worked. We would have had way better profit margins, but this is one of the things I regret, but we did not know better. My dad was convinced, and so we were also convinced that the best way to sell our company for more would be to have the most cutting edge software and to be ahead of the curve. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs make this mistake, right? And so we invested heavily, I think something like $7 to $9 million into building out a new platform. And this was one of the things that my dad had started before we took over, and he didn't realize that like his dev team was lying to him, and there was no real product, and he had started selling a product that didn't exist. So this is the situation we come into, trying to figure this out, and people are wanting to get into this thing, and it's not really real, you know. But he didn't know, and so anyway, we like put a ton of money into that, which hurt our margins, as you can imagine. A bunch of our team, we had like 34 staff on demand kind of contractor team members that are a part of that. And if we would have cut all that off, we would have probably sold for 40 million, you know?
Wow.
But we didn't know. And the company that bought us actually ended up, as far as I'm aware, it's still, that project's on pause because it had not fully panned out yet. So
what are you putting to the bottom line on 10 million in revenue, ballpark, like range? Like how much profit are you making? It sounds like a very lucrative business.
It was very good. We're probably at 50% profit margins.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're clearing like $5 million a year. And is that going into your dad's genes along the way, or are you reinvesting all that to build this platform, or what's going on?
Both. My dad was well compensated, but he also heavily invested back into the business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So so Quorum does this kind of auction process. I'd be curious to know, and again, I'm asking this because I think a lot of our listeners may be going through a similar process in the coming months. And I think they'd be curious to know, like, what was the most surprising thing Quorum recommended before you go to market? Like, what was their like big aha recommendation, which you're like, holy smokes, I'd never thought of that?
Yeah. When you prep your business to sell, even if you feel like it's well run, like ours was very well run. We had people from Tony Robbins and stuff saying it's the top 5% of businesses. Like we got a lot of praise for how we ran the company. But at the same time, when we went to prep to sell, the biggest aha was how much work it takes. So Quorum basically gave us a whole list of stuff of like, you guys need to get all this stuff dialed in if you want to prep for a clean sales process. And it was everything from, cleaning up our financials to the way that we structured our team to a bunch of different things. And it took us about a year to go through polishing up the business and then also the whole like pitching out to 100 companies and finding the right buyer. It's a long process and it's like a full-time job on top of what you're already doing running your company, at least in my experience.
That's super helpful. And walk through that Quorum list of like 100 things you got to do to polish up the business. One of them was you got to clean up your financials. Again, I'm trying to get specifics. Do you remember anything else, any other bullet points on that list where you're like, I never thought that would be important, or I'm surprised to see that on the list? Do you remember any other bullets on that checklist?
I think I don't remember a ton of specifics off of Quorums. I mean, it is like the normal stuff that you'd imagine, like how your company's positioned, how you're doing financially, what's your plan for the future, what do you see the growth opportunities be like? It's all that kind of stuff that you'd imagine. But I think what was the big aha for us was when you actually take your business to market and you're pitching to all these different people, it's realizing how different every buyer is and what some see as strengths, what others may see as weaknesses, and kind of figuring out what everyone really wants from the business. So it's kind of similar.
Yeah, tell me a story about that. Like who did you go to where you had to change the way you position the business? Like, can you share any specifics?
Yeah, for sure. So as an example, I can actually give you a really interesting example. I think that will be helpful for the buyers. We went to one company was interested in potentially buying us. They were led by Ryan Graves, who is the co-founder of Uber, billionaire co-founder of Uber, right? Like he's really good. And we got to talk with him and he was interested in buying the company. But at the end of the day, he backed out of buying our business because he didn't love the industry that it serviced. So for him, industry was a risk.
Okay.
Right? But what's interesting is for Constellation, who ended up buying us, they bought us because of where we serviced. And the reason why is because they had purchased our competitor a couple of years ago, our biggest competitor. And when they made that acquisition, they asked the guys, do we need to worry about Infinity? And the owners of that company said, no, it's run by a bunch of young guys who don't know what they're doing. And then the next day, post-acquisition, they lost their biggest customer to us. And they've said they've led customers ever since. And by the time they were wanting to buy us, we had almost put the other one out of business. And so for us, Constellation wanted to buy us at a premium to protect the other investment. And also because they liked the industry that we were in, they understood it. They felt like it was valuable and that they could really scale there and help people there. So it's really interesting to see like one person sees something as a weakness and another, it's the reason they make the purchase.
So did you get a sense when you were presenting to Constellation that they were like super interested, more interested than this Ryan guy?
Yeah, to some degree. So Constellation had actually been trying to buy us for years and we had been ignoring them. And we didn't actually expect to sell to them. But once it got into different people competing and Constellation being one of the people competing to buy us, Constellation ended up coming above the others because of things that were important to us as sellers, which I can tell more about if that's valuable.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things we liked about Constellation, their approach, and this is just my experience, so I could be wrong, but their approach was they keep everything really decentralized, and so it's really interesting. We wanted it to be good for our team. We wanted them to have growth opportunities. We didn't want to sell to someone who's going to fire half of our people when we felt indebted to what they had done for us, or someone who is going to erase our culture. The stuff that we felt like made us successful. And Constellation came in and said, "Hey, we don't buy, raise prices and sell within 3 years. We buy and hold. We buy and hold forever. We keep things decentralized. Your same culture stays in place. We try and keep as much of your team as possible. In fact, we'd want you to stay on and keep running it if you guys would." So it was really a good fit for us because we felt like they would do right by us post acquisition. And so we actually, it's funny because we had ignored them for years, but they ended up being the most attractive after we talked to a bunch of different people. So
isn't that wild? How many offers did you end up getting?
We had pitched out to about 100 people, and we had, if I remember right, something like 5 or 6, but people would, put in an LOI, go into due diligence, and some of them would drop off for various reasons.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And can you speak just broadly about valuation, like on a multiple of either EBITDA or revenue, like where were or just aggregate value? Like I'd be curious to know kind of what the difference was from the low to the high, and sort of how you thought about valuation.
Yeah. I think every entrepreneur kind of goes into selling their business with some kind of like multiple in mind, or they have some end outcome, like I'd like to make this much money, right? For us with Constellation, we got like I'll keep it a range, I guess, but like a 4 to 6x multiple. And what was really nice for them is they were willing to go all cash up front outside of like $1.5 million that they kept just for us to stay on for a year and do a transition. And that was dependent on us keeping certain growth rates and stuff, basically to make sure for them that the business transitioned well and stayed on the same trajectory it was on before the sell. Yep. So we did all that, and then we got the earnout, and it was amazing.
So to be clear, it was sort of 4 to 6 times EBITDA.
Yeah, 4 to 6 times EBITDA.
Okay. And how did that compare with the other? Like, was that the high offer, or were there others that were in the same range? Like, be curious to know kind of how big a range there was.
We had gotten a 35 million, but they pulled out during due diligence. That was our biggest offer. Mm-hmm. Of the ones that stuck through due diligence, it was all around the same as Constellation, but Constellation was a couple million more than another person.
Okay. And it appealed to you that they were going to give you virtually all cash and keep things decentralized. Like they weren't going to fold you into another group or what have you. Now, did you want to stay on as an employee or in an earnout, or were you hoping for a clean exit?
I was hoping for a clean exit. Me and all of my brothers were. I think that we were young and naive enough to think like, hey, we don't want to be anyone's employee. We're just going to go build something, Mm-hmm. Now that I'm a little bit older, I honestly think that if you stay on with Constellation, it's an incredible opportunity. because basically, if you're a good entrepreneur, you can end up running a portfolio of companies for CSI. And the way that they give like stock equity and other things and bonuses is really competitive, and it's really good for their team. So,
Got it. Okay. That's really interesting. So talk to me about when the offer came in, are you looking at these kind of, you got one for 35 and it falls through, the 4 to 6 times offer? I mean, are you sharing this with your mom? Are these coming in? Like, just I'd be curious about the family dynamics that are going on when you're looking at these offers. I mean, are they coming to you? Are they going to your mom, your dad? Like, how does that all work?
All of the offers would come into my brother as the CFO. Okay. He was kind of our point of contact with the people helping us sell. And I mean, I'm on those emails too, so I guess they came into me and my brother, but we would just take the offers to our parents and then we'd all consult on them together.
And what was their reaction?
So, I mean, it's mixed, mom's super excited. Dad is like, I think this business is worth 70 million, So it's just, it is what it is. But, I think, at the end of the day, everyone's just excited,
But that's a big delta between a happy mom and a $70 million dad. How did you guys work through that? Like, did someone have the ultimate veto to say, like, we're accepting this? I mean, presumably it would have been your mom and dad who would have had to agree.
Yeah,
together.
I think that in the end, my mom and dad just came to an agreement that they felt like what we did sell it for was best. And to be honest, there's a lot of stuff we're considering, like presidential changes, trends in the industry. I mean, this is a crazy year with COVID and stuff. And so it's kind of like, do we want to keep running this and like navigate all of that? Or is it good to like sell it right now? And is it a good time to pass off and stuff? So I think with a lot of those different factors, my parents just kind of came around to like, you know what, we're okay with selling. We think this is fair. And then my dad was also really excited that he had another little business that he could work on the side, which is, his main thing was he wanted like kind of purpose and to stay busy and things like that,
Got it. But his health was such that he didn't need a power of attorney to decide for him. He was able to he had the mental faculties to make the decision himself. Yeah. Got it. And
but all that stuff can get murkier than you'd imagine. It's kind of crazy, right? Like my dad did go and, have brain scans done, and like there's a lot of damage done to his brain. But as far as like in-person performance, like stuff's pretty good. But then at the same time, it's like he must have not felt good enough because he wasn't really involved in the sales process or pitching companies or anything like that. He just would review the offers, So I'm not sure, but at the same time, he's doing a lot better now. So it's complicated, honestly. And I guess that's all I want to share with your audience is like, it's not as clear cut as what you'll read in a book or anything. It is a human endeavor, a human experience. There's a lot of complexity, and you just kind of try to do the best with what you can, and also, get advice from others and just kind of move forward. So
what was the relationship with you and Ryan at this time? Were you in united force, like feeling fully aligned with the valuation, or were you at odds with your brothers as well as your folks?
We were very united. I think I personally would have pushed for a little bit more than the 20% split, but I was fine with either. And I just really wanted to like get it done and help my parents, So we kind of would just go work in the company all day long, and then afterwards come back and try and navigate mom and dad and all the family stuff. And me and Ryan make a really good team. We did an awesome job together.
Sounds like it. Sounds like you guys are a killer team. Well, listen, I appreciate you sharing the story in such color. I think it's a really important story because there are obviously a lot of folks. No one expects the diagnosis, but when it comes, it's great to have things in place for those who you love. So it's a great story, cautionary tale, I guess. But it sounds like it worked out as well as can be expected. Are you up for a quick lightning round before I let you go?
Yeah, definitely. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to throw out just to the audience real quick too. If you look at the research, a lot of businesses, most entrepreneurs' journeys don't end in happily ever after. We wish they did, right? But if we're looking at reality, it does not typically happen. And a lot of times the end of a company, at least from what I've seen, I'd love to hear your opinion, John, is like divorce, death, or disease, or something of that nature. I kind of thought, or destruction because the entrepreneur got bored. I call them the 4 Ds, right? But it's like, if you know that, then you can be aware of it. You can start to really plan for it. My dad didn't know, we didn't know as a family, so he didn't have a plan. And he kind of got lucky that his kids were able to come in and do that. But at the same time, in another sense, we're another investment that he made, right? Like he created us, and him and my mom put energy into us. And so that's another investment that paid off. But I guess I just want to share with people that that is very common for this to happen. And a lot of times people buying companies are literally just kind of waiting for the time that the entrepreneur hits a burnout point or one of these events happens. And you're better off. Like when we went through the sales process, no one knew any of this was going on except for us and Quorum Group, because we did not want to show that because it would have hurt what was offered to us. And we weren't really hurting. Like we could have kept cruising, right? And so that's kind of my recommendation for people is just be aware of what life can throw at you and try and plan for it. And if it's happening to you, don't think it's just you or you have bad luck. It's just normal.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point. I've seen some similar research where the 2 most common reasons business owners sell are, number one, they get approached by an acquirer and it triggers the thought process. Never thought of it, but hey, I've got this offer. Why don't I pursue it? The second is some sort of health scare where they or someone they love runs into some sort of health event. And so it's interesting that in your case, it was the latter, obviously, but in either case, the entrepreneur is kind of on their back foot a little bit. They're not proactively managing the process. They're sort of reacting to the situation, which is obviously not ideal for maximizing what you take out of it. So it's really, really important for our audience to hear, which is great. Okay, a couple of quick questions before I let you go. You talked to 100 different potential acquirers, or Quorum reached out to 100 different potential acquirers. You had 6 letters of intent. I'm guessing there was a slimy trick that one of those potential acquirers tried to play on you, something to take advantage of your naivete around the value of your company or how to structure it. What was the slimiest trick someone tried to play?
We definitely got some offers where we were like, there is no way that we're interested in this. I think for us, the slimiest for us was people wanting to not put up a lot of cash up front and then have us stay on for a longer period with the company. And it just wasn't appealing to us. And we're like, there's no way, So I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but it's super common.
It's like, hey, we're going to give you $50 million $50 million of this business. We're going to give you 200,000 up front. And the other, it's not as uncommon as you might think. Biggest mistake you made personally during the process of selling. So if you had a do-over or a mulligan, what might you do differently?
Stop building the newer version of our software. Because if we cut the millions that we were putting into that, we would have had a better profit margins and gotten a much better multiple off of that. So,
what was the lowest emotional ebb you reached during the process of selling, where just emotionally the sales process got to you a bit?
It's just long. It's way longer than you'd imagine because you love your business. You know how good it is, but when you're a year in and you're basically doing 2 jobs, the job of selling and the job of running your business, plus the job of anyone who falls out of your business until you replace them, right? When you're doing all of that and then also dealing with all of the family relationship stuff, it just gets pretty old after a while.
It sounds exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like one of
It's
those
intense.
3 jobs sounds exhausting.
Yeah. I think that's one of the hardest things about entrepreneurship is you have to balance so much and you have to do it in a strategic way and for sustained periods of time. So
What
by
was
the
the
time we actually sold, we were feeling pretty burnt out on everything because it's like managing family stuff and business and blah blah blah.
what was the emotional high?
I feel like it was probably the moment we sold and seeing the money come in and seeing like realizing like no way we just pulled this off, you know? Like it's not every day where suddenly, you know, $25 million is just wired to you. And you're just like, no way. Like we just did it. Mom and dad are good. Everyone's taken care of. This is an incredible thing. So I remember having that kind of uh, reunion after it happened, just meeting back with the family and just being like, guys, we just pulled this off. That was definitely the big moment.
I mean, made even more special, I would imagine, because you grew up one of 6, food stamps, you know, like the whole deal. Like, I mean, that must have been an incredible journey for you going from, you know, literally getting meal vouchers in school because your parents didn't have enough to pay for lunch money to like a multi-million dollar check. That must have felt unbelievable.
It is. It's unbelievable. I think that's one of the amazing things about what America has been is that you truly can go from nothing to something if you're willing to put it all out on the field and make it happen. I personally think that having a strong family helps a lot. And I think that what's crazy, the biggest shocking thing to me is that you have this moment of like, I can't believe we just did this. This is amazing. And then you come into this, and I'm sure other people have talked about this a lot on your show, but there's almost this post-acquisition like grieving period as well, where it's like, I can't believe that this is gone, you know, and you have to navigate that. And then I know it sounds like, I don't know what people call it, like first world problems, I guess.
1% problems.
Yeah, but it's so hard to figure out. Now you're transitioning from entrepreneur to now how do I figure out how to invest all this money and like how do we grow this for like generations, and it's extremely challenging, and it's a whole nother set of stuff that you have to figure out, which, you know, it's fun and it's amazing, great problems to have, but I think that shocked me. You know, you think like, oh, I'm done and it's going to be easy, and it's like, no, there's a next level to figure out.
Your mom must be, it probably sounds super like too cliche or superficial to say proud of you, but I mean, you've literally changed her life in unbelievable number of ways.
Yeah, I think my mom is grateful for us. And also, I mean, you know, she had 6 kids and she started at age 16. So she sacrificed a lot of years that she gave to us as well. So I think that there's the grateful for us, and then also the proud of what she did as a mom kind of component as well.
And for your dad, I know he thought it might have been worth more at some point. Did you ever reconcile with him about sort of the value? And did you ever get a sense of closure with him that he felt proud of what you guys had accomplished?
I do think my dad is proud of us. He's proud of us as people. He says that we're his greatest accomplishment, that we've all become good men. So, you know, I'm grateful for that. I'm still very close with my dad. We have a great relationship. As far as the value of the company and how it all panned out, I'm not sure if he will come around, but
Yeah.
I think he's still grateful at the end of the day. He doesn't change his opinion easily.
Well, I appreciate you going there with me. Tell me you bought yourself a trophy to commemorate the win. What'd you buy with the money?
I moved my family to Hawaii.
Really?
So, Yeah, we moved to Hawaii. We got a house on the North Shore of Oahu, and I feel very blessed to be raising my kids out on the beach. So
that's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah,
good for you. Well, enjoy that. And what are you up to now? Like, other than surfing in Oahu, what are you doing? What's keeping you busy these days?
I took a period to try and recover from the exit. I think a lot of founders probably feel that as well. So I worked with CSI, had an amazing experience for a year, took some time off. I was able to act as a business consultant and an advisor for like 20 other companies so far, and have been able to help them scale, which is fun. I've been spending a lot of time just being a dad and raising my family. And me and my brothers are now looking to start sort of our own portfolio of businesses. So we're looking to make our first or next acquisition. And I'm also working on a health optimization platform for entrepreneurs. So to help them avoid the disease and illness stuff that we faced and be healthy while they build their companies.
Which is the ultimate fusion of your education and what your original idea was, which was health and wellness and your experience in entrepreneurship. I look forward to kind of catching up with that. What's the best way for folks to learn more about you and follow your progress? Are you an Instagram guy or a Twitter? Where do people find you?
Yeah, I don't have a huge social following because we were a B2B company, so we didn't need it necessarily. But if they would love to learn more, connect with me, it's just at Alexx.Leyva on Instagram.
On Instagram. And we'll also put, if you're up for this, your LinkedIn profile on in the show notes, and we'll have both Instagram and LinkedIn if that works.
Perfect. Yeah. And if anyone needs to connect or ask me any questions, I'm happy to help. I just like to see other entrepreneurs succeed. So
that's awesome. Okay, Alexx, we'll put both the Instagram profile as well as LinkedIn and the show notes at Built to Sell. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.